Today we're going to talk about Palestinian food in the perspective of Palestinians in the diaspora and the Nakba. It's 75 years since the Nakba. Our people are all over the world with very different personal histories, very different places of origin, places where people were expelled, where people were dispossessed, what they've kept with them, what do we all attach ourselves to in food. Xavier is Palestinian, Chilean, Palestinian. You're lucky to have both nationalities. But in terms of identity, to start with, we're all Palestinian. And we all kept dishes. We all eat more or less the same thing. There are fights about what's better and what's less good. But today, each family in Palestine, regardless of where they live, have been impacted by the 75 years of Nakba, of refuge. Where we are right now is my great-grandfather's home in Bethlehem. We're not refugees, but the case we have here is when my grandparents used to export their oranges from their lands in Jaffa. Your family left in the 50s.
Yes.
So you're a third generation Chilean, right?
Yeah.
And 100 generations Palestinian.
And more.
Maybe more. What is the magic dish that got us to start talking to each other?
It's something very interesting because when we talk about the context of 75 years of the Nakba, we are also talking about the context of 75 years of resilience that has kept the rights of our people alive in our conscience, in our hearts, attachment to our land. And of course, food is an integral part of this. Now, I remember the first time we met, we started talking about two dishes that for Palestinians in Chile are particularly important. And I'm certain that at least the first one of those, people at home may not relate to the term marmaon.
Marmaon. So marmaon, for the ones who are not from Bethlehem, is maftoul. Is that wheat grain that's hand-rolled with whole wheat, which you would eat all over Palestine. Different recipes, but which you kept in Chile as marmaon.
With tomato sauce, with meat, sometimes with chickpeas.
And onions?
Yeah, onions and garlic, of course. But if you go around Palestine and you're the expert here, you know, some people, when you talk about maftoul or marmaon with tomato, they will be like, what? Like,
Well, already, if you talk about marmaon, they think you're crazy.
Yeah.
So, when you told me the story when you were in Berzet as a student, please tell us.
A beautiful family invited me for lunch, and they asked, what would you like to have? What's your favorite dish? Now, to be honest, my favorite dish is not marmaon or maftoul, but I didn't want to bother them too much. I didn't know, by the way, the preparation much. So I said, marmaon. They started looking at me like, what kind of food you're talking about? So when I described, they said, oh, that's called maftoul. And of course, they were laughing at me for a few years, until very recently.
I had to go through this when we filmed Teta's Kitchen, because we did film maftoul in Berzet also. And I told the grandmother I was cooking with, I said, oh, we're going to do marmaon today. And she was like, what are you talking about? And then she remembered that she had a friend from Bethlehem who had once used this word. So it's quite interesting how our community in Chile preserved not only the dish, but the name.
The name, and also when it comes to, I mean, you're talking about people, there's a very interesting book that was launched last year by a brilliant Palestinian Jordanian, I was going to say kid, he's younger than me, but it's a scholar, of course, Nakba, brilliant book, where he actually talks about how the British mandate prevented many people who had gone 100 years ago to Chile and other places from returning back to Palestine. From that perspective, you know, you're talking about people that not necessarily want to stay there, people that left for different reasons, were prevented from coming here while Zionists were allowed to take over the place in Palestine, to say it. And then they kept frozen this Palestine they left. So for many families now in Chile, Palestine is the Palestine of 1930, of 1940, of 1920, with the same food, the same recipes, perhaps different ingredients.
But the dialect,
Yeah, of course.
when I met your uncle the first time, I felt I was hearing my grandfather speak. But you said different ingredients. It's interesting because knafa is the other dish we talked about. And I still enjoy sometimes when Palestinians come from Chile and I serve them in a bursi knafa and I wait for their reaction. Because they use the fork, they look at it, why is there cheese in this? So in Palestine.
And they love it, by the way.
They love it. And I think there's a couple of Palestinian bakers right now in Chile making a fortune out of doing nabulsi knafa, but what you had at home was the Bethlehem knafa, right?
Definitely. And something which is very difficult to understand is how both of them are called the knafe. The same name. We have a knafe from Gaza, for example, as well.
Yeah.
I mean, our cuisine is extremely rich for all this talk about Palestine being a land without a people and things that we have confronted for the past century, perhaps.
But when you see how the Palestinians in Chile, for example, have also not only kept food, not only kept ingredients, but also kept a bit of our village and city sensitivities. So Xavier Abu Eid comes from
The glorious city of Benjamin, on
From
top
the-
of Bethlehem, on top.
from the village next door. And they have the best mishmish in the world.
Best apricots, the best olive oil, the best meat.
No, wait. Time out. Your olive oil is very good, because I actually do my own olive oil in Bejara, so I cannot. It's very good. Is it the best in the world? I'm not sure.
It's the most expensive in Palestine.
Sadly. But you also have a love for meat. So whether you're Bejali living in Bejara or Bejali living in Chile, you all seem to love barbecue. Right?
And we love the marma'on with meat. And elsewhere in Palestine,
It's chicken, it's not tomato sauce, very often it's an onion, chopped onion that's cooked with the marma'on
and
itself.
chickpeas.
And always there's chickpeas, but there's no tomato sauce.
Yeah.
So my mother's marma'on, which you've had earlier,
Thank you so much. And I don't mind having it again.
Sahtel,
Arriba.
and next time you're in Bethlehem, we have to think about one or two of these other dishes that you grew up with. But for the marma'on, the best marma'on adaptation was done a few years ago when I asked a friend of mine in Chile, what do you do with marma'on, view that her father is the largest producer of charcuterie in Chile? So I feed my kids marma'on, but I serve it with sausages. Does it make it a Chilean dish?
No.
It is a Palestinian dish. And I think in Chile now you're using more and more the word cocina palestina,
Palestinian cuisine.
Palestinian cuisine. And that is where appropriation is very important. This has never become a Chilean dish. Knafa, Bethlehem knafa, has disappeared in Palestine, is present in Chile, now it's coming back to Palestine, but it's never become a Chilean dish, contrary to this being called Israeli couscous, for example.
Just like falafel will never be Israeli, nor hummus, nor anything like this.